Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Alliance Bernstein. Since 2019, employees have impacted our community by giving more than 5,000 hours of volunteerism in Middle Tennessee. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Once a month, we invite Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell into the studio to talk about what he's up to and to take calls from you, our listeners. As some of you may know, Mayor O'Connell keeps a very packed and busy schedule, and we're grateful that he comes in to talk with us, but more importantly, that he talks with you to field your questions and address your concerns. And as always, remember that Mayor O'Connell and the folks in his administration are human beings trying the best they can. So whether you're happy or you're upset, please show some respect. All right, with that, allow me to welcome Mayor Freddie O'Connell back to This Is Nashville. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor.
Khalil, great to be back with you.
Always good to have you. So I got to start here. We have to start here. Since you were here last month, Nashville has seen an increase in activity from white supremacists and neo-Nazis.
No, we don't have to start here.
I think it's the thing on everyone's mind these days. You know, they've marched downtown, disrupted a Metro Council meeting, shouted anti-Semitic hate, and also recently yelled racial slurs at young black kids downtown who were just trying to play drums. I do want to talk about the first incident when they marched downtown on the streets for the first time. There are existing laws meant to bar large groups from marching without a permit in city streets. A lot of people have had this question. Can you answer this for us? Did they have a permit?
So there are two different groups. The first group that came in that most of their participants wore face coverings did not have a permit. And so there's kind of this idea of a parade, but they also were not in the street. And we're looking at a couple of things that we could respond to with as to were they in full violation of this with the number of people they had if they didn't block right of way. The face coverings thing, too, we're looking at. It's been the issue there with existing laws is I think the COVID response and where face coverings policies have been has gotten complicated by that. So these are issues we're exploring. But at the time, the response, that first set of kind of demonstrators, was that they were generally not in violation of something that they could easily be detained for.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. It may be hard to answer. Why do you think these groups are attracted to Nashville?
I don't think it's Nashville. If you look at these groups, they are active in lots of cities. I think the difference between Nashville and a lot of other areas is we are at the center of a lot of attention. We have a major ecosystem of entertainers. We have all kinds of different events constantly coming to town, from sports to business to entertainment. And so if you are here and you disrupt something in a visible way, it's very likelier than it would be in even other cities in Tennessee to attract national attention. And they're very aware of this. And particularly this most recent group is very, very aware of exactly where every single boundary of First Amendment privileges and rights are. And they go to that line and they stand there and they stay there. And they know that it's going to upset people. They know that it's going to create divisiveness. They know that it's going to challenge enforcement capabilities, and they know that it's going to challenge the boundaries of decency.
Have any business owners downtown mentioned their worries about these marches?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who pays attention to the reputation of the city is concerned about this, and I'd say that ranges from downtown merchants to the CVC to the Nashville Chamber. And generally, these organizations have, just like us, spoken up about it and expressed condemnation, outrage, and a reminder that this is not who we are, right? I think there's been this important distinction that these people are coming here. The guy who's on trial today is from Canada and wound up having to surrender his passport. And so I think it's an expression of, yes, they know they can come here, seek attention, attract attention, unfortunately get a lot of attention, upset people, accomplish their goals, and that there's not a lot we can do about it. And that's why I think it's important to remind people this isn't us. This is not Nashville. This is not who we are as a city. We don't welcome them. We don't condone this activity. We wholesale reject this activity. And generally speaking, what we see in the community from anything from the Nashville Jewish Federation to the vigil for Reverend Lawson that Councilmember Zulfat Swara recognized a few evenings ago. I mean, we're still trying to make sure that there is a spirit of togetherness.
It's Ask the Mayor with Mayor Freddie O'Connell. To call to ask your question or comment for Mayor O'Connell, just dial 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Okay, speaking of the Jewish Federation of Greater Nashville, what do you think of what Rabbi Dan Horowitz said, what he said, quote, he's urging the city to, quote, enforce existing laws meant to bar large groups from marching without a permit, from wearing a mask to disguise themselves on public property, end quote.
Well, so I think in the next segment, you all are going to actually have on our Director of Law, Wally Dietz.
Yes.
And we have had Director Dietz in our office a couple times in the past few weeks to do a systematic review of every action that's known from any of the groups that have been there. And the reality is, especially for this most recent group, we went through everything. We went through permits, decency, profanity, even pornography in some of the scenarios, harassment, amplification of audio, just all of the things that we saw as potential scenarios. And I will say, for the two different groups, the things that may be easiest to get them on, and this is something that has happened in other jurisdictions as well, there was an incident where they created a large volume of litter. And of all things, that may be something that is enforceable. The difficulty there is we have not yet identified a confirmable witness and a confirmable suspect. Similarly, a previous group had engaged in vandalism, and so there may be some opportunities there. But I think what I would say is this is the most frustrating part of this, is that on everything we've documented so far on the timeline of events, it has proven incredibly difficult to find something that could result in a detention activity, a full citation that across the law enforcement process and prosecution process involving the district attorney and even the U.S. Attorney's Office. These are all very challenging First Amendment scenarios, and this Metro Council already has had multiple challenging First Amendment scenarios to consider. So I think, as you talk to Director Dietz in a little bit, there will be a more illumination of this issue.
All right. Listeners, if you're calling, remember, please let the phone ring. We have people answering your calls. We guarantee that we will get to you. Before we take a call, let me ask you this. This is kind of about messaging. These racist, white supremacist groups want to come down to Nashville, as you alluded to earlier, and use the spotlight that Nashville has to bring out their caustic and insidious message. Now, what about the city? Are there plans to counteract that, plans to publicly counter their presence, like billboards or ad campaigns and such? We're
working on a variety of things from the Metro standpoint. We've been talking to a number of community organizations about this. But I also, there's sensitivity here too. We know, and this was kind of the spirit of how we arrived in this moment in the first place, is our entire objective is to recognize where some of the struggles are, just to have that opportunity to live and work and find those opportunities to enjoy life in Nashville from a cost of living and quality of life standpoint. We know this obviously puts pressure on that, but I think I also want to be careful not to overextend ourselves with something that truly is just literally a group of clowns coming in with offensive material on their shirts and to pass out. I mean, this wasn't even 20 people, and it's agitated the city for weeks, where in that same span of time, we've opened our first permanent supportive housing project that's public. We've gotten this incredible multi-year award from the Department of Health and Human Services to expand the Nashville Strong Babies program so that it is now county-wide. And that 5-year program has had every single participating mother survive, right? Mm-hmm. We are invested in our competitiveness. We've won multiple federal grants. And I want to make sure that this group of jerks doesn't successfully steal the joy of the work we're doing. We've become the backbone government partner for My Brother's Keeper as they're about to go into a program targeted at not just embracing literacy for young men of color in this city, but propelling them on to a lifetime of success and safety. There are so many good things happening right now that we don't want to lose the focus on those either.
All right, we're going to take a phone call. We have Jerry from Nashville. Jerry, thanks for calling in. What is your comment, my friend?
Yes. I'm calling about the incident that happened this weekend with the young children. I want to ask the mayor, why did the Metro police officers allow the white supremacists to call them a racist slur, and instead of making them leave the area, they moved the children? I want to know about that, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your call, Jerry.
Jerry, thanks. This is a tough one, and it went viral this weekend. It happened actually closer to when they first arrived. It's a tough moment because the part that didn't go viral is the officers encouraging the kids who were involved in that moment to be better than the Nazis. The part that didn't go viral was them confronting the Nazis and saying, hey, these guys are kids. This is a group that has been downtown. They interact regularly with the Metro Nashville Police Department. I've talked to Commander Bearden, the commander of Central Precinct, about their presence. There are some areas where they can absolutely be. There are some areas where they're not supposed to be, and these other guys were new to the moment and specifically trying to confront them. We have asked MNPD and the district attorney's office to review this, but it's such a challenging moment. They did say to the Nazi folks, these are kids, basically leave them alone. The hard part is they have the right to be public racist jerks.
Mm. All right. Thank you for that. We're going to go to Tudros in Nashville. Tudros, what is your comment or question for Mayor O'Connell?
Yes. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks, Mr. Mayor, for taking your time. My name is Theodros Manaye, and I'm the president of the Ethiopian Community Association here in Nashville, Tennessee. And we help immigrants or refugees who call Nashville home. And we help the community in many, many ways, dealing with job hunting for the newcomers, social, economical, so many things. And we are a small office. We have a small office here in Antioch, but we're planning now to purchase land to build a community center. And I was wondering if the mayor's office has anything to provide us, any grants or help us in any way come with this project.
Let me look at this. There's not really a land grant program that's active for this purpose, but we always look at opportunities when we have an opportunity to build out something where there could be something. I think Jackie Gomez, our director of New and Indigenous Americans programs, who's currently running My City Academy and staffs our New Americans Advisory Council, may have some thoughts on this, and I want to maybe run this by her and Bob Mendez, who's our Chief Development Officer, just to look at what's kind of in the pipeline. If you wouldn't mind sending your proposal over to mayor@nashville.gov, I think it'd be really worth reviewing, because I know Jackie is passionate about her role, and we really have worked to make sure we've got a platform for the city to continue to be a welcoming place. And I thank you for the work that you've done in that regard.
All right. Thank you so much for your call, Teddy. All right. We're going to move on real quick to transportation. We got a question from Ben on Twitter. He says, quote, if the upcoming transit referendum is approved, is it possible that existing vehicle lanes would be converted to bus-only lanes? And how would you enforce that?
Yeah, that's possible. It's certainly something we're going to review. There's a lot of state conditions, not only under the Improve Act that lets us pursue dedicated funding for transportation and infrastructure. And just to back up a second, that's what we've done. We've taken advantage of bipartisan state law, put together a program. You can go learn more details at nashville.gov/transit. It's a comprehensive program that improves corridors. It's ultimately about sidewalk delivery, signal modernization, 24/7, 365 transit service, and a lot of safety elements as we deal with dangerous roadways. We know that multiple jurisdictions see their traditional bus service improve its overall efficacy when you can have dedicated lanes in addition to the dedicated funding source. We've got to evaluate it on a corridor-by-corridor basis. For instance, some corridors like Murfreesboro Pike, there is actually already active planning money looking at that corridor. It's probably very conducive to something like dedicated lanes. We've got to look at it segment by segment. There will be different amounts of support, both in terms of where I think you've got residential capacity along the corridor and also council and community support. There are other more challenging corridors like Nolensville, which get narrow in some stretches, and you may not be able to see the benefits for the entire stretch of corridor. But all that's being explored. State law after the Improve Act, though, means we do kind of have to do all of that work on state-owned roads in conjunction with TDOT. So we've kept them very much in the mix of the planning stages. The way it would be enforced is very common to where you see it in other cities. You tend to have markings that are visible. You tend to have, your traffic enforcement process work alongside it. Sometimes you can have some variation of physical separation. Going back to when we were considering the AMP, a high capacity corridor proposal from 5 Points to St. Thomas West that went through a part of East Nashville, came through downtown and went out West End. The discussion there was about having a little bit of curb, lower than a curb, but something that was raised to make a delineation there. You do also get some potential for innovation. You can tend to see emergency vehicles make use of these lanes that gets them where they're going faster, and you also have some opportunities for things like automated vehicles that could potentially take advantage of it as well.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Colonna. We're talking this hour with Mayor Freddie O'Connell as we bring you Ask the Mayor. To call with your question for Mayor O'Connell, just dial 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Okay, staying on transportation, WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams recently reported that Middle Tennessee's only commuter train, the WeGo Star, which runs between Nashville and Lebanon, it only operates during the morning, afternoon rush hours. And soon, maybe adding evening and weekend services. What is driving these changes, and how involved is your office in really making that happen? What would these mean for Nashville?
Yeah, this is really important. There have been a couple different iterations of what's happened with the Star, which is our single commuter rail route. It gets you out to Lebanon, Mount Juliet, passing through Donaldson and Hermitage on the way there. There's Riverfront Station, which is the downtown terminus of it. It's a great experience. If you live anywhere along that alignment and haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. Every year, Transit Now Nashville and other organizations do this wonderful event called Ticket to Ride that invites people to start downtown, go out to Donaldson, and then come back. Or, if you're headed out that way, check it out. It's just a great way to experience the train, even if you're not somebody who can ride it regularly. But the reason it matters is years ago, when I was actually still serving on the Nashville MTA board, which is now WeGo Public Transit, we actually had our transit authority assume operational responsibility for the Star. As after we did that, instead of a kind of bureaucracy managing it and having an actual transit operation do it, we were able to achieve a whole new plateau of ridership. Now, changes in regional commuting, especially post-pandemic, have meant that after a ridership fall off through 2020 and years after, it hasn't come back. But a big part of that too is the experience of it is it's way more powerful if you can make it something that people can ride in both directions, and it's not just a rush hour service. But even for those people that I know who work, for instance, for the state of Tennessee that want to use the train more regularly, if you miss that 5 o'clock whistle and you need to get out of the office, but it's 6 o'clock and you took the train in, you're out of luck. There's really no return train that goes out after that, just kind of even the earliest part of rush hour. And so the Regional Transportation Authority, RTA, has spent the past few months engaged in this Star Future Vision study. As mayor of Nashville, I serve on the RTA board of directors as well. They have fully endorsed our transportation improvement program, and that's important because embedded in our program, while we're not going to pay for all of the regional transit service just out of Nashville, we know that Nashvillians are highly invested in the success of the Star and want to be riding it more than they actively can right now. Even beyond what's in the Star Future Vision study, there are future scenarios that could actually have a spur that goes off and serves the Geodis Park and gets to the fairgrounds. There could be a spur that comes all the way up to Neuhoff in Germantown. Those are amazing scenarios to consider that their likelihood increases if we're successful in our referendum initiative. So that transit plan I referenced earlier, pay attention, because we hope that after a trip to the Davidson County Election Commission, all Nashvillians will be able to vote on it on November 5th. That night and weekend service is important. We have direct interaction with the Star in our transportation improvement program. So all the details up at nashville.gov/transit.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll keep the calls coming from Mayor O'Connell. You can dial 615-760 to ask your question. If you are on the line, stay on the line. And if you're calling, let it ring. We will pick that up. Just dial 615-760-2000. We'll be right back.
We want Freddie for a leader. Oh, stay to raise your champagne glass. We want Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man of class. We want Freddie for a leader.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Colonna, and this is Nashville. We are in the studio with Mayor Freddie O'Connell for Ask the Mayor. It's where you call in to ask a question to our mayor. You can do that by calling 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. We have a couple people on the line. We're going to go to Randy in Nashville. Randy, thanks for calling. What is your question?
Two questions. One, will you support funding in your capital spending for an African-American History Museum? And two, do you know of a plan to move dirt from the Nissan Stadium to Bordeaux? Thank you. I'll listen offline.
Yeah, great. Really important question here. We looked when I was still on the Metro Council for years at potential uses for the Morris Memorial Building, and I was frustrated that as I took office as mayor, that building was already under contract before we could even have a meaningful conversation about it, because one of the uses that had come up was a civil rights museum. And I think I've followed very closely the journey and eventual successful opening of the National Museum for African American Music. I've also been engaged for a long time with the Jefferson Street Sound Museum, and I think there's a lot of active discussion about the need for some kind of museum. I've heard what you talked about, an African American History Museum. I've heard a civil rights museum. And I think ultimately, in order for that to succeed, we can't just put money out there and say, hey, somebody come up with a museum idea. I think we've got to make sure what made the National Museum of African American Music successful in getting it open and having state and local funding support for it there was a very concrete plan for that. And I think right now we're still at the point where I'm listening very carefully to the community and how expressions for a history and or civil rights museum might come together. And the NAMAM had a really organized group of financial backers and museum planners, and we're hoping and trying to stay very involved in that conversation. But we're not. Metro hasn't I didn't come to office with some concrete plan for that, and I think it's actually better for a museum design and support community to be independent of government and have our support for it. So we're still following all the threads of that conversation. It's not just one big conversation, so still paying a lot of attention to that. As far as Bordeaux, this is an interesting one. I think this is a site, let me say first and foremost, I know there's been a lot of concerns about the landfill site out there. We will not ever reopen that landfill. There are a couple things happening out there. One is we do have to maintain some compliance with a former landfill site that does require a cap and cover scenario. So at some point, regardless if it's now or later, we will be needing to do some compliance activity out there. We had looked to try to do something important that was a conversation underway before I took office that I'm still very invested in, which is moving from a posture of historical environmental racism to something where a community asset could be provided in the form of a community solar array. And this is something that we had a lot of success with on another former landfill site out in Madison, where our single community solar project is underway. These are great projects because not only do they help us with energy policy, they also increase the number of green jobs in the area, give us a ton of workforce development opportunities, and work hand in hand with things like the home uplift program under NES and TVA that allow people to weatherize their homes. So you get a lot of opportunities for green job development in communities that historically have not had access, and you get to turn that workforce development around into things that help residents lower their utility bills. So that stuff was already in the works, and then Metro Water needed some dirt out there, and we thought, can we do this all at once, where we've got this opportunity to do compliance with the EPA, leave a community asset where a community harm had been done, and the Titans are excavating. They've got dirt that we need and could use right now. And unfortunately, there has been a lot of miscommunication and misinformation in the community. We have continued an open line of dialogue with Councilmember Joy Kimbrough in the area, and that conversation is ongoing as we speak.
All right. Thank you for that. We got a call from Susan in Nashville. Susan, what's your comment or question for Mayor O'Connell?
Hi, I'm concerned with the chronic overcrowding funding of Metro Animal Care and Control. We have an epidemic of loose dogs, and if people catch them, they can't drop them off at MAC because they're overcrowded. I actually have a dog at my house right now. Is there a plan for this?
There have been a variety of plans for this. It's a challenging situation. You probably already know some of this. Metro Animal Care and Control is housed at the Metro Public Health Department, and we've seen a few different proposals. We've seen a conversation that could separate MAC from MPHD. We've also looked at it just as a funding scenario. We did have some planning money in the mix this year to try to help us identify which of the proposals on the table would be most successful in the long run. I will say, though, in the past year, I've dropped off 3 animals I helped rescue at MAC and had a good overall experience. And I know some of it just depends on the volume on any given day and any given week. They are working very hard with what we know is a limited budget. This particular fiscal year, I knew before I even took office that we were going to see limits to what we could invest in services where we know they're needed. We had to unfortunately engage in a round of targeted savings with Metro departments after a few years of higher than expected growth. We're still seeing some growth, but it returned to earth. My hope is that we can revisit this issue more strategically with the planning dollars we put in the budget to enable this. And I know there are some Metro Council members who are very engaged that we're also working closely with on this issue.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan. We're going to go to Alejandro. I'm sorry. All right, Alejandro, what is your comment, my friend?
So back in 2020, I'm undocumented. And in those times, I was already scared to call the police when my house got broken into and all my stuff got stolen. Now with this new state law that is passed that says that all sectors of government need to work with ICE to help catch undocumented immigrants, what security can you offer my people or people who are in my situation to trust the police, to call the police when a crime is being committed or when they're victims of crimes that are already scared and don't really trust the police?
Yeah, Alejandro, I'm very sorry to hear that this has been so stressful for you and that you already went through a scenario where you were concerned about calling the police. There's no question that I think state legislators have a different outlook on this than we as a city do. We've tried for many years to be a welcoming and friendly city, and I've talked to both Chief Drake and our law director, Wally Dietz, and we can make sure he gets a chance to weigh in on this in the next segment. But our conversations with them, even after state law, are that Metro Nashville Police Department has been very public in their outlook that this does not change anything about their approach to law enforcement. It is not a part of their protocol to even explore what someone's immigration status would be at the time of arrest or any other circumstance when they're involved in an investigation. There has been no training, no support money allocated by the state of Tennessee. Right now, I would encourage everyone to continue going about their lives the way they would. And I would say anybody who does have an incident that needs emergency response, continue to engage public safety professionals, whether it's police, fire, medical, or other emergencies, as well as continue to engage in the public school system if children are in schools. We need the city to continue working. We need people to continue to be safe, and our job at the local level is to ensure everyone's safety, and that's our mission, that's our aim. And right now, we don't believe there's going to be any change in the status quo as a result of this state law.
All right. Thank you so much for that call, Alejandro. We're going to move to Jed in Nashville. Jed, thank you for calling. We only have a couple minutes left, so please make it short.
Sure. So I know a big part of what brings people into downtown is the abundance of live music that we have. Oftentimes, these live musicians are having to pay 10 to 20% of their nightly income simply just to park to go work. I was curious if there's anything in the works or being talked about musician parking.
Yeah, and this, again, goes back to some of my time on council. It's a great question because it's a part of our overall project, again, and making it easier for people to live, work, and play here in Nashville. I want to give some credit here to the Musicians Union. Dave Pomeroy and that union have done a lot of work with existing private parking companies to create avenues for discounted parking rates for musicians who are playing downtown. So there's been some success there. There's been some discussion about an expansion, but I think we've been trying to really follow the lead of the Musicians Union and the arrangements that they've had underway already. And we continue to stay closely in touch with the staff at the Transportation Licensing Commission and the Traffic and Parking Commission, both to look for opportunities to make sure that this important part of our identity as Music City continues without interruption. I know my former colleague on Metro Council, Jeff Syracuse, was passionate about this issue, and we continue to stay engaged in it to see if we can make further progress than the progress that's been made already. So thanks for the call. It's a very important issue.
Thank you, Jed. I have to add to that, Mr. Mayor. I recently was downtown having lunch with a former colleague. I spent $50 on parking. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, the downtown parking on the whole, it can be challenging. I will say my first recommendation to most people is if you're in an area close to one, prefer one of our public parking garages because they tend to have some of the most reasonable rates downtown. And I will say, though there were some bumps on the road and getting it up and running, I really appreciate that I don't have to think about quarters in my wallet anymore if I'm going to just park on the street. By and large, especially if I'm getting lunch, the metered parking with smart meters downtown now is another great option that NDOT is overall managing with the help of a private sector partner. And that deployment of technology has meant that I can find on-street parking downtown much more easily now. But I will say a lot of people want to be downtown. This is another reason why I think our overall transportation improvement program matters, because we've got a lot in there for increasing the ease of access to downtown, and otherwise we're looking at ways to make sure people can get in and out very easily.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, we got one last call from Madeline in Nashville. Madeline, thank you for holding for as long as you have. What's your question for Mayor O'Connell?
Very quickly, is there any forward movement on getting rid of plastic bags in grocery stores and shops?
Madeline, this is a really interesting question, not the least of which for the reason that it has come up multiple times just in the past couple of weeks from a variety of people. Here's the hard part. This one is one where when I was on the Metro Council, one of my colleagues actually proposed a plastic bag elimination bill. And I will just say some concerned members of a select variety of industries went to the state legislature and got our ability to regulate plastic bags at the local level preempted. So we do live in a state that has an unusual amount of preemption, and it's just one of the things we have to, it forces us to be a lot more creative in terms of how we address situations like that. So I'm very lucky that I get to continue working with Kendra Abkowitz in our mayor's office. She is our director of sustainability and resiliency, and she is one of the people thinking creatively about issues like this all the time.
Madeline, thank you so much for calling. And Mr. Mayor O'Connell, thank you very much for being here. We'll see you next month, okay?
Great. Glad to be with you, Khalil. Enjoy your time with Wally.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll meet with the Director of Law for Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, Wally Dietz, and learn what the city's top attorney is up to. And you can call and ask him your question at 615-760-2000. As always, you can join us by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. When individuals or businesses are facing legal situations, it's commonplace to hire an attorney. But what about a city or metropolis? As you may have guessed, cities need attorneys as well. That's where the Director of Law, Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County steps in. Who is our city's top attorney? Well, he goes by the name of Wally Dietz, and he joins me now. Counselor Dietz, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you so much, Khalil. It's a pleasure to be here.
Really happy to have you here with us. And everybody and listeners know that the phones are still open, so you can ask Counselor Dietz a question. Just call us at 615-760-2000. Now, Counselor Dietz, for someone who doesn't know, what is the role of the Metro Law Department? Are you just lawyers for the mayor, the Metro Council, the city, an organization? How does it work?
That's such a good question because I don't think people generally understand what we do and who our clients are. Under the charter, we are to represent every Metro department, agency, board, commission, elected official. So the mayor is my client. He's not my only client. We represent boards and commissions. We represent department heads, everything from parks to smaller departments. And we give advice to all of those different clients. We have about 37 lawyers, and we need a lot more.
Okay. Question, are there areas of law that you don't handle for the city?
Well, Deputy Director Tom Cross likes to say we do everything except domestic relations and criminal law.
Okay.
So we do everything else. We represent the city when the city is sued, any department in the city. We sometimes bring actions on behalf of Metro. For instance, we filed 4 lawsuits against the state of Tennessee for legislation they passed a year and a half ago when they were attacking Nashville's governance. Sometimes we sue. A lot of times we defend. There's really nothing that we do not do. Now, I don't advise a district attorney. That's a state position, and that's a state office, and the attorney general advises him. But for the rest of Metro, we are the lawyers.
Okay, you mentioned the lawsuit against the state for preemption. The mayor, one of his final question was talking about that as being an issue with Nashville and their governors. And in 2023, the Republican-led state legislature passed at least 7 bills aiming at preempting laws passed by the city, meaning that the state law overrides local law. In response to this, Nashville, as you mentioned, you have filed lawsuits against 4, the attempt to reduce the size of Metro Council, the undoing of a charter referendum relating to the racetrack demolition at the fairgrounds, and overhauls of the airport and sports authority boards. Can you give us an update? How's it going with the 4 city versus state lawsuits?
So far, we have won every lawsuit at the beginning. For instance, the smaller of the cases, the one dealing with the fairgrounds where they tried to rewrite our charter, that case is over. We won a unanimous opinion from this 3-judge panel, and the state did not appeal. The council case is front and center because we just argued motions for summary judgment, meaning we're telling the court this is a legal issue. We don't need a trial. You can resolve it as a matter of law. And we argued that 2 months ago. We were successful in getting an injunction. The state legislature tried to interfere with our council elections that were just a year ago, but people had already picked up petitions, appointed treasurers, were raising money, and we argued to the court, you can't change the rules in the middle of an election. So the court gave us a unanimous 3-0 decision in joining the law as it applied to 2023. The question is, can the law be applied going forward to 2027? And that's where we are right now. We're arguing that now.
Is there any of these legal battles, anything really stand out to you as far as like which one will have the most importance to the city and the one that's the most dynamic?
Well, I think they're all important because they were all the state trying to intrude on our local authority and local power. One thing to me that was so compelling about the council case is that we were able to build a coalition of people to make our argument that Nashville was very intentional about having a 40-member council. When it was first proposed to consolidate Nashville with the surrounding county back in the early 60s, it failed. And one of the main reasons it failed was that the black community was concerned that it called for 27 council members. They were worried that the council districts would be so large and the black vote would be diluted to the point that there would be no minority representation on the council. So I met with Pastor Tucker and the IMF, and I met with the NAACP. I met with Sandra Sepulveda with the Latino community. Brenda Wynn was very active. We put together affidavits that Nashville was very intentional about having 40 council members in order to assure adequate minority representation. And the court cited all that. So that, to me, is an important part of protecting our history and who we are. I think it's less of a problem now if you look at who our 5 citywide council members are at large. The number one vote getter was Zulfat Sawara, African-American Muslim woman. Second largest vote getter was Delisha Porterfield. So I think in some ways it's not as necessary as it was. I think if we do have to reduce to 20, I think the Planning Commission will be able to draw some districts that will make sure we have adequate minority representation.
Okay, I'm sure everybody will be keeping their eyes on this. We did have a tweet in. This is from Clint on Twitter. Is there a public set of guidelines to advise when and how Metro Legal offers guidance to any boards or commissions, and it clarifies any conflicts of interest?
That's something we are actually working on now, so that is a very timely question. We are working with the MHRC to have a global reconciliation agreement arising out of the dispute over the Arts Commission activity. And as a part of that, we already had we were working on a program where we were going to give updates to boards and commissions. We already train boards and commission members on ethics, conflicts of interest, Open Meeting Act, Public Records Act, so that they understand all those. We've been doing that for years, but we want to expand it. And one thing that Director Tucker has asked us to do is to come up with a pamphlet to all the boards and commissions, making it clear that the Department of Law is there to provide advice, not to make policy decisions. I think we're really good at that. I think we do not cross the line. But to the extent there's any ambiguity in the mind of a board member or a commissioner, we want to eliminate that. And I got a draft of that document yesterday, so we are working on that.
All right. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour with Wally Dietz, the Director of Law, Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. To ask him a question, call us at 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. We have a call from Kelly in Nashville. Kelly, thanks for calling. What is your question for Counselor Dietz?
Hi, Director Dietz. My question is, you've defended Metro Legal's refusal to sue the state over the law abolishing the COB using the Home Rule statute. My question is, if the allegations in the MMPD whistleblower complaint are true and MMPD worked with state legislators to overturn that law, would that change the Home Rule statute as a defense to not sue the state?
So that is a very alarming allegation in the 61-page complaint filed by Garrett Davidson. When that complaint was filed, I spoke to the mayor, and we agreed that it would be necessary to bring in independent counsel to look at that. And so we ended up on Ed Stanton, who is a very highly regarded attorney in Memphis. He was the United States attorney for 8 years under President Obama, and he and his team have been on the ground now for 6 weeks. They are investigating it. I have absolutely no role in the investigation. I'm not meddling in it. I'm not even asking for updates. And so the Stanton investigation will look into that. But to get to your question, even if the allegation is proven to be true, it would have consequences for those individuals, but it would not mean that the law is unraveled or reversed.
All right. Thank you so much. We've got a call coming in from Jean Marie. Thank you for calling, Kelly. All right, Jean Marie in Nashville, what is your call? Oh, we're not quite ready for her, and I think I may have just hung up on you. I apologize, Jean Marie. Please give us a call back. Okay, I want to move on a little bit. You know, Councilor Dietz, it's been a really tough year for Metro Arts. One of the biggest problems for them last year was, having to scrap their grant funding formula to start over because of a ruling from your department. It said that it was illegally race-based. Can you explain to us how you got to that conclusion?
Yes, and it was a close call, but we felt like the prudent course was to have a revote. We had worked with the Arts Commission staff so that they could take into account the size of the artist, all sorts of factors where they are in the community, but without a disparity study proving a record of discrimination, it would be against the law to have race as a scoring factor. And so we took it out, and they took it out, and they went through the whole application process, and it got to that July meeting, and that's where it got convoluted because several of the board of the commissioners said, okay, actually, the way it was presented to the board was convoluted and designed to be confusing, I'm afraid. There were different funding scenarios. It was very unclear which artists were actually getting funded under which scenario. They were models, not, okay, we're going to give A, B, C, D, E grants. And so it got to be very confusing, but there were lots of questions from several commissioners, which of the scenarios benefits BIPOC the most? Well, once you interject that into the decision, it becomes very problematic. And we cited only the two most recent Supreme Court cases on affirmative action, but there's actually a body of law that goes back to 1989 where the Supreme Court has methodically cut away at the right of governments or private parties to use affirmative action. And so we were concerned that there was some liability there. So in an executive session, my associate director asked the commission to consider revoting. And in that executive session, she said, here are all the things you can take into account. You can take into account zip codes. Where do they live? You can take into account what kind of artists they are. You can take into account the size of their business. So there were ways that we thought we could still have a pathway for the commission to give a lot of money to individual artists. And then we got to the August meeting. Actually, if you look at the votes, the opinion from the Department of Law changed one vote out of 15 commissioners. Only one vote. It's not the reason the August vote flipped back. But then there have been all these accusations and going forward. I'll say this, it has been grueling. But we have spent a lot of time going through records. There are some really, really excellent staff members there at the Arts Commission, some of whom the director was not letting them do their job. And so the staff has been working with us. I'm very glad that today we have paid all of the operating grants, the highest number possible. We have paid every Thrive artist except There's one that we had trouble contacting, and we just connected in the last couple of days.
Okay.
So we're on the verge of paying all the Thrive artists, all the operating grants, and we're now looking forward to paying the mural artists as part of this MHRC resolution.
So you all want to try to help. As you said, you can't set policy. So these are ways you can help them fund these artists in a way that's legal, right?
We were trying to do that last summer, and we're working with them now. And I'm working with several members of the minority caucus on the Metro Council about what sort of funding mechanisms we can have to fund Thrive artists in the future. It's not going to be the same program, but there's a way to create a structure that would comply with the law, and we are having those discussions now.
All right. I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show. That's Wally Dietz, the Director of Law for Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Again, Councilor Dietz, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to you for tuning in. This is Nashville. It's a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. You can call us and leave us a message at 615-751-2500. That's our new call-in, leave us a message line. We're looking for guests. So if you or someone you know is currently experienced in the foster care system, we're also looking for single parents and people who have recently retired. Give us a call, 615-751-2500. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you on Monday, everybody, and be good to each other.